Okay, so now moving on to the game changer,
Charlene.
Charlene. Do you remember when it started?
I remember getting that script, um, and I wasn't sure exactly. I remember thinking that the tone was very different from what we were coming off of. You know what I'm saying? Um, and I also remember it being very short. At least I thought it
On
was
paper, yeah.
short.
On
Yeah,
paper, it was
on
short.
paper.
It
On
was
paper. Uh,
it was 10 pages only.
so you had a vision that I just didn't see at that point. Um, but hey, look what it did. Look where it's at now.
Well, the idea of Charlene, I would say, the concept I had. I read an article in 2017. Maybe it was around the time when we were filming Obsession or we had finished Obsession. It was about this girl. A little different from what the film is, but a very disturbing article about a girl. She was the second child, and she had no ID in China because a lot of kids are born
Yeah,
in villages. They don't have any identification.
yep.
They're the secret kids.
I've read those stories as well.
Then she moved to the city. She couldn't even travel to the city. She came in someone's car, and because she couldn't get a train ticket, because you can't get that without an ID. Same thing.
Of course.
Then she worked at a factory, or it was some sort of labor job. I don't exactly remember now. She had some sort of labor job where she was paid like minimum wage. It was a very depressing article. She got married and then she was mistreated and she left the marriage. Uh, and then eventually she committed suicide. And she committed suicide at the age of, she was 23 or 24 only. So the article kind of just got stuck in my head. And I knew at some point I would want to make a film. I'll get into it later how many films I've made with that article. But it's just that's if you think about this story in itself about that girl, you wonder, you can, like, from an outsider's point of view, you can just think that, okay, what kind of life she had and how did she, what was going on in her head, because she was clearly trying. So it's a very brave thing to do, to leave your village all alone as a girl. You know that too. In China, it's
Obviously.
they have
Without a doubt.
restrictions. So, and the way she left, I mean, I don't know whose car she came in. It didn't mention anything. Unfortunately, this article does not exist anymore, and I cannot say the name of what magazine or newspaper it was in. Uh, uh, you know why it's not there.
Yeah,
We all know why it's not
obviously.
there.
Well, yeah, that goes without saying.
But then this whole story was just in my head, and then one day, which is I think about 3 or 4 months after we finished Beijing Diaries, the edit of Beijing Diaries was being done. Angela, she started posting her dance videos
Hmm.
on social media. And when I saw those dance videos, that's where the idea was very basic. Is to show a person's psychological condition through dance. That was the idea. That's all I had. And that story was there in my head that, okay, this character is gonna go through what she went, but we cannot do the whole thing for obvious reasons. And you need the budget, you need a lot of characters and all that stuff. And it has to be done in a very small budget. It has to be done basically with no budget. So when I contacted Angela and we met, that's why earlier I said that when I pitched Beijing Diaries to Heather T, that day I ran into Angela, who knew Angela is going to be the next actress for the film, for the next art house film. Uh, then, yeah, basically we spoke and she's like, yeah, I want to act. We're like, cool.
Okay.
I wrote the story you're saying that it was the script was so short. It was only 10 or 11 pages, I remember.
Yeah.
Um, and I had a reference from film which didn't have a lot of dialogues. And I kind of wanted to execute it the same way, where there aren't many dialogues, but still you're following the journey of the character. You're seeing their life. You have to see a life, how it's lived, not how characters are moving. It isn't. That's why the film has a lot of point of view shots as well. They have there's scenes, 2.5, 3 minute scenes, which are completely point of view. So you need to experience that.
So it sounds like that the primary mover, the primary motivation for telling this story was just to tell her story and not to make a social statement. Is that correct?
See, when you read a story like this, and you know, and I know that that's just one story I'm talking about. There are many stories like this here.
Yeah.
And these are untold, unheard of stories. I'm sure there are other countries where such stories exist too. But since we have access to resources here, so this is the story. And I also, again, this is something I wanted to do with Beijing Diaries, where I wanted to tackle social issues as well. But there wasn't much that could go there. In a way, it is also about the psychological condition of the three characters.
Yeah.
But here, this is based off a real person's life. And I hate to say this, that I don't know if it's the right way to put it, but just woman related issues are always in, and there's something new or the other, but people still don't learn. We all know all the sexist people out there, the things they do, rapes, murders, but this is a completely different approach to a story, because this is a person who tried everything, failed at everything, and then did what she had to do. It was basically she gave up.
Yeah.
So that's where the story came from. And then, of course, I don't know as a male what goes in a female's head. I'm not Chinese, so I don't know what goes there. So that's why the story is also from a outsider's point of view.
I don't think you need to know, and I think this is why the story works. I don't think you need to know what goes on in a Chinese person's head. Of course, it's going to be different from a Western perspective, but from a human perspective, just that empathy for what a human being is going through. I think just telling that part of it is what people will connect with. Because in all honesty, when I first read it, it wasn't my favorite, and it's not because it was a downer. It was because maybe I didn't have that empathy in the beginning until you actually see it and experience the finished product.
And that being said, from Charlene, I think, was the first film where I did not write, which I do still. I didn't write detailed scripts because, like, Obsession, Akuma were very detailed scripts, but they don't translate the way. So there was a lot of space open for changes.
Yeah.
And also it was the first time where it was a film which did not have many dialogues. Beijing Diaries doesn't have a lot of dialogues as well. But here, it's super quiet. Like, first 20 minutes, there are no dialogues.
Yeah, that's probably one of the things that jumps out most when you watch the film. The first 20 minutes, I don't think anyone, except for the phone call. I think that's the phone call.
Just
is
one
the,
phone call, that's it.
that
It ends
you
there.
hear any, communication, verbal communication. That is.
When your character steps in, that's where the
Yeah.
dialogues come
Yeah.
in, and you have most of the dialogues.
Yeah. I'm curious though. Did you? And I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce this word, but did you know about this condition,
Anthropophobia.
anthropophobia? Did you know about this condition before you wrote the script, or did it come along during?
I knew there was a condition. I didn't know what it's called. I didn't have a name. And trust me, it's very difficult to find information about it. I think it's also the first film ever made in the world about this condition. There's no film. There's very little resources and material online. So a lot of it comes from just trying to figuring it out how a person would be, how a person would react, how the person would move, go out. That's why the whole night and day thing comes.
And just for the people that are listening that might not know what it is, can you give them a really quick, simple definition?
Anthropophobia is fear of human interaction. So you cannot interact with people unless you know them really well or you've known them your whole life. It's very hard to win their trust. They basically don't trust anyone.
And that's what makes your character so interesting, in that he's able to form a real, somewhat of a bond with this girl, despite never really, communicating with her face to face. And she, in turn, forms a bond, although maybe not as strong from her end. She forms a bond with him. And I think that's the most interesting part of the story. When you watch it, it's not, the audience has to be willing to go there, and they have to really think about that, and it's not just in your face. And I think that's why it really works.
The characters were never supposed to meet. There were multiple drafts that were written, but in none of the draft the characters actually come face to face.
Yeah, that's
It
what I
was
mean. That's why it works.
was never a thing. It was, in fact, the scene where the two characters almost meet, because you had to have that thing. It came because it just felt like I thought that they need to see each other once, even if it's from a distance. They don't face each other. They only see the backs.
Yeah.
She sees his back and he sees her back walking away.
Yeah.
So I think that was the beauty of the film, that they never meet. And also the dialogues between them, they're very minimal. The letters are basically 1 or 2 lines.
Yeah.
They're just giving you the key information.
Part of it. Yeah, that's another part of it. It's just really interesting, and it really gives you a lot about where these characters are, and that they're able to connect so well just in these short, brief statements. But it also gives you the feeling that they're starving for human interaction, real human interaction.
I think, well, she is. He isn't. He is still like at the point which is why he sends his friend in one scene, because he still doesn't know if he wants to face her. And then when he goes, then that scene happens where they don't interact. They're there together in the same place, but they still don't face each other. But over there, I would say there, like you mentioned, there is a bit of a social commentary with the fact, I won't give the spoiler, but it's just for cinematic purposes. She says a certain thing, which kind of, because the culture does not allow because the culture sees a certain kind of relationship with the outsider in a negative way, she won't go forward with it.
Definitely.
Let's not misunderstand this thing. This film is not a love story in any way possible, because I know a few people thought it's a love story. It's not at all a love story. There's no romantic angle in the film. It's a friendship in a way.
Well, not a romantic love story, at any rate.
Because both of the characters, their intentions are very clean. They're not talking to each other thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna date this person."
Yeah.
They don't. That's not even something on the table. It's just someone we have to talk to. That's it.
So, what about his background? Is because he seems like a character that's either running away from something, or has no direction. And this incident, or you know, I won't say meeting, but connecting with this woman, is what gives his life a little bit of meaning, for lack of a better word, at this point.
It's kind of like, well, firstly, I approach this character like a kid. When I say like a kid, is that even in very briefly in dialogues, when you hear that, oh, you lived in India, now China, India and China, everyone knows, are the two most populated countries in the world. It's like when a kid has homework, the mom says that do your homework. The kid will come up with excuses. He will have the book out, but he's not going to do the homework. He will keep it there to show the world that, okay, he is doing what he's saying, but he's actually not doing it. And then there's a person who has bigger problems than you. When you see that, or a kid sees that, then they realize, okay, I can do this now. So you need an example to show a kid, to make them do what they need to do. So that was the whole point over there.
So the kid doesn't want to do the homework because he doesn't feel that he can do the homework, but then he realizes that he can.
He just doesn't want to do it.
He just doesn't want to do
He
it.
doesn't want to make the effort. Like the character says, living in India didn't help you. Why China? So with that dialogue, it kind of gives away that, okay, he's a person who's going to these places to show that he wants to improve, but seeing his actions, he's not making any effort. He's just trying to show that he's doing it, but he's not doing it. So it goes like that.
So how did you find working with Angela for the first time, for this first project? Because I noticed she didn't have a whole lot of experience being in front of a camera at this point. So how did you find that working with her?
She was pretty easygoing.
Yes,
I think I've said this at an interview once in the past, is that why I chose Angela is because the character is quiet and she's very quiet in real life. She doesn't talk much. You know that too.
Too true.
So it was easy to imagine her playing this character because she has one line in the whole film which she says, which is in Chinese. Timbudon. And then she has a voiceover.
Yes. Okay. I know that line.
So I thought she would fit well because her personality is quiet. It will be easy to execute for her because it's all actions, moving around, just showing how she lives, what she does. Although one can question why she always, well, not always, is after the letter, she starts going to the park. But before that, she's in different places. We always see the exterior, but we never see the interior. So for the longest time in the film, you're only seeing her sobbing outdoors. But the real psychological condition comes out when she's dancing. That's when you see Okay.
The dance. The dance is actually probably one of the most artistic, in addition to the film, but the dance is one of the most artistic, one of the most appealing things about the film. And if you could tell us how that all evolved, did you give her any pointers as to what you wanted the dance to be, or did she envision this all on her own?
See, the thing with the dance was shot after the whole film, 6 months after the whole film was shot.
Mm.
Uh, my brother and one of his friends, they did the music for the film. And you know very well, when my brother does music, it takes a long time.
Takes a little while, indeed. Hey, you can't rush perfection.
So, well, my first brief was for the music before the dance. The music was because without the music, the dance cannot be choreographed.
Yeah.
So, and there were 2 dance sequences. So, one I told him it has to show depression, but the music shouldn't be depressing because that's where the dance is gonna kick in. You don't make it lively. It's just maintain that tone. And the second one comes at a very crucial point in the film. The second one is actually a lot more important than the first one, because in the first one we know she's depressed, we know she has problems, but in the second one, it's kind of a build-up of everything, and also now the second one is also kind of representing the psychological condition of the male character. And the track and the dance is called Waiting because they were waiting to see each other. Same thing, they don't meet when it happens because that's the right thing to do in that situation for them. So it's to show like, okay, we waited for something, waiting. Because you've talked to someone for a long time over letters. And it's also in an era of emails, they're using letters. They're using handwritten notes. So it's just like all these things I kind of wanted to experiment with at that point.
So, what do you think about your character and the way where the film ended and where his journey is going? Because it ends on it ends with a little bit of feeling of hope, and I think hope is one of those things where it could be hope is something that you have when things are not great. You know what I'm saying? So where do you see that in relation to his journey as far as going forward with it? I guess what I'm asking is there anything more that you would have wanted to add or that you might want to add later?
As far as the ending goes, the whole point was that he learns from her death. That's why he goes out of his shell. And the interesting point here is the ending was actually shot in Beijing. The real ending was shot in the apartment. I still have the footage. He is looking outside the window he's standing at the balcony, and there are quite a few shots like that in the film. And then he thinks about it, and he pulls out a suitcase. And then walking on the street with the suitcase was the ending that was shot earlier. Here's the great thing about filmmaking, or let's say independent filmmaking, if you don't have to answer anyone any questions. I went to Shanghai on vacation.
Yeah.
And I took my DSLR with me. The only shots in the film which are shot with a DSLR are the Shanghai shots. And that's where I was like, okay, because I knew I might want to add something. That's why it cuts between past and present. In between, not so much. I think there are 3 points where it happens. And that's the opening of the film as well. you see him walking away with the bag, but the body language is different. And at the end, you see him walking away and the body language is completely different there too. So he's thinking of the past when he is out. There was, I don't know if you remember this, there was also a version, I'm sure it was written, I don't know if I sent it to you, where the ending was that it was planned to be done on green screen, and I did a lot of tests for it too. That the ending was supposed to be at a movie theater. The film is being screened.
I remember
and he's standing at the back.
Yep, I remember you mentioned that.
But it seemed like a less important of an ending because later he didn't care if the film is made or not because he actually doesn't want the film to be made.
Mm-hmm.
So the first and final walk, because the first shot is a walk and the final shot is a walk with the backpack, but the two walks are very different.
Mm. Yeah.
So it's a whole circle. The journey completes because 3 months ago he experienced that. He learned from her. That's why he just was like, screw it. I'll go and try. Now I will try. In between as well, the present day shots, the Shanghai shots, are also all back shots, him walking with the same backpack.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see him at the beginning of the film, he has luggage when he's first introduced. He has a lot of luggage when he moves into the apartment. But at the end of the film, the beginning, end, and middle, when you see his present life, he only has a backpack. So all the load is taken off.
Yeah. Sweet. So, I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway for those who are listening. Can you answer, how surprised were you with how well the film done?
I couldn't believe it at that point. Because, we never think that way. That
obviously,
the only hope is that it recovers money. It gets the money. That's the only thing I hope. Before that, there was no expectation. It was also the first time we went the festival route. So, firstly, when the first festival happened, of course, it went really well. As a finalist, we ended.
Yeah.
Then one after another. And then this one, when I opened the email, it said, please check the list. So I opened the list. Now here's the funny part. I'm scrolling down, I'm looking at posters. Like, where's mine? Where's mine? Where's mine? Where's mine? And there's nothing. And at that moment, you're like, okay, this is not the kind of joke or prank you want to play on someone.
Yeah.
That you say, oh, you won an award?
Yeah.
And first one for film. And I'm just like, what the hell? This is a bad joke. I go back up, I see the link they sent was actually of the previous season of the awards, of the festival. Oh, God. Then I went, same thing, scroll. And I saw Best Picture. For a second, I was like, right away, I called Gabby when she came. I messaged you. Yeah. I messaged Angela. I called home. It was like, I remember at first I sent you a voice note. I sent the same voice note to Angela. And then it was just like everyone's voice. I remember, I don't think I'll forget that moment where the excitement in your voice, the excitement everyone had, I was talking to at that point.
No doubt.
It was priceless, that moment.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
And the fact that in my head it was like, okay, we got one and this will probably be it. 2 weeks later,
another.
Same thing.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, same thing.
Yeah.
Well, then it just went on and...
There came a point where I was like expecting to get a message every couple of weeks saying, okay, it's been recognized for this, it's been recognized for this.
Yeah, my parents got a little, they started showing off a little.
Of course. Can you blame them? No doubt.
And because eventually By the way, it ended up getting 26 awards, which includes Best Film, Best Independent Film, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Music. So we bagged a lot of different categories.
No doubt.
Best Trailer as well, sorry. We got how many Best Trailers? I think 4 or 5 Best Trailers too.
Mm. So, were there any technical challenges you ran into for this one?
I think this one in Beijing Diaries had a very similar problem because both films did not have a lot of dialogues. And because of that, editing becomes a little tough. You don't know how much to keep, where to stop, and how much to show and not. It's tough because if you, let's say, if you shoot a scene and it's 3 minutes, maybe all 3 minutes look good to you, but then you have to think as an audience that, okay, I need to cut it because not everyone's gonna sit there and see a person just sitting on a chair for 3 minutes. Gotta cut it down to maybe a minute and a half.
I definitely understand.
So that's very tough when it comes to editing. And this was an issue I had with both films, Diaries and Charlene.
Yeah.
Because these both films have similar beats.
You know, it's with the success that it has experienced. You start to imagine why was it so successful? Why did it resonate with people so well? And I think one of the things that really lends itself to why people, have really taken to the film is that the characters, despite not speaking a lot, they're pretty well written. And you've written a lot of strong, because despite what her life was like and what she went through, Charlene is a strong character. Mm-hmm. I mean, like you mentioned, she left her village.
Sorry to cut you off here. There's one misconception most people had. Charlene is not a character. Charlene is the script.
Charlene is the script.
Serene is the character.
Yes.
Her name is Serene. The
Yes,
script
yes.
is Charlene.
My mistake.
The script in the film, not
Yes.
the film script.
Yes. So, but the point is, you've written a lot of strong female characters. Do you consider yourself a feminist writer? Is that supposed to be a joke? Okay, is that a joke question? I'm
This is gonna
serious.
come at some point.
I'm serious. Do you consider yourself a feminist writer, or you just have a right? You just have envisioned strong female characters?
I think you're gonna relate to this thing quite well. That we know a lot more female actors, or
That's
a lot
true.
more reliable actors that are female than male.
That is very true. True. So, the documentary, The Journey.